My body's telling me no, but assisted reproduction's telling me yes. Okay, I probably shouldn't even hint at anything R. Kelly related, but the song was too good to pass up, and hopefully you get the point I'm trying to make. Well, in this episode, we're talking about why people choose surrogacy. What's up? I'm Corlandos Scott, a surrogacy attorney in Los Angeles. So, my practice revolves around helping people grow their families through assisted reproductive technologies. I know it's a mouthful. Well, in this episode, we're going to look at the biggest reasons for surrogacy, what surrogacy makes possible, and when you can and can't use surrogacy. Let's dive in. So, what's the biggest reason for surrogacy? Like I said in the opening, surrogacy is definitely a solution for growing your family when your body simply tries to tell you no. No, you can't have a baby. So simply put, when the body says no, medical science or assisted reproductive technologies says yes. So when a man is dealing with male infertility factors, his body is giving him the no. Or a woman is not able to become pregnant or sustain a pregnancy to delivery, her body is giving her the no. Or when single men or same-sex male couples want to have a child, their body politely informs them, no, I can't do this on my own. Well, in either case, surrogacy offers a yes as a way to grow your family when your body may be telling you no. Now, there are several reasons why some women or couples are unable to conceive. There are health conditions that make pregnancy difficult, impossible, or even deadly dangerous, so as to cause a doctor to advise you against getting pregnant. For instance, in an interview with the Today Show, Kim Kardashian said, "So I asked my doctors, can I do it one more time? And they were like, we won't even put an embryo in you. That would be like malpractice." So you can see the situations, right? Well, in situations like that, surrogacy presents a relatively safer option for growing your family. And notice that I said relatively safer. In the surrogacy journey, we still have to take into account that the surrogate is taking on all of the normal risks associated with the pregnancy. Now, the upside of the safety factor of working with a surrogate is that women who qualify as surrogates generally have easier and more problem-free pregnancies than the average woman. Let's look at what surrogacy makes possible. First, surrogacy allows hopeful parents to grow their families or complete their families when it would be otherwise impossible or even medically inadvisable. Also, as for an alternative family building arrangements are concerned, unlike adoptions many times, it allows for hopeful parents to share a genetic connection with the child. Now, how is this possible? Well, even though someone else may be carrying the baby for a parent or a set of parents, those parents can still be biologically linked to the child if they're able to use their own gametes, and that's just a fancy word for genetic material like sperm and eggs. But they can still be able to be genetically related to the child if they use their own gametes to create the embryos that are transferred to the surrogate's uterus. Surrogacy also creates relationships. Now, sometimes more relationships than parents through surrogacy really want to create. There's so many people involved in a successful surrogacy journey. Let me tell you, there's doctors, there's mental health professionals, there's lawyers, there's agencies, there's lions, tigers, bears. Oh my, the list goes on and on. It really truly takes a village to have a baby through surrogacy the right way. But this village of relationships becomes more than just cogs in the baby-making machine. This village becomes a guidepost, a stepping stone, a navigational star. It even really sometimes becomes a shoulder to cry on. And when you do it right, you should never, ever, ever be alone in the surrogacy process. Another thing that makes surrogacy possible is more control in terms of risks. Surrogacy is a form of Planned Parenthood. And like everything else you plan, you do your best to limit the risks involved in the process. Well, in surrogacy, you don't just jump into it hoping that everything will go well. You lay out the options, you make plans, you plot the timing, you spell out the responsibilities and the rights of the people involved, and you make informed decisions. Now, bringing life into the world is beyond my pay grade, I'll go ahead and let you know, and really everyone else involved in the process for that matter. But what is within our control is carefully planning and executing the things that we can affect. Now let's talk about when you can and can't use surrogacy. But before we do, if you're getting something out of this, please hit that like button so that YouTube knows to share this with more people. And while you're at it, go ahead, subscribe. I know you want to, so you won't miss out on any of my upcoming videos. And if you know someone who's looking to grow their family through assisted reproduction, then go ahead and share it with them. Don't be selfish. No one likes a selfish friend, really. Okay, so when can you and can't you use surrogacy? Well, let's say there's no medical issue causing issues with your fertility and surrogacy isn't a necessity. How about then? Well, before I tackle that, let me get up on my human rights soapbox. I believe that humans have the right to autonomy, meaning that you should have the right and ability to make decisions and choices about your own medical care and treatment that you receive, as long as those decisions are within the boundaries of law. Now, I believe this applies to the hopeful parents, as well as the woman acting as a gestational carrier or surrogate, as we call them. And it also applies to egg donors and sperm donors. Now, with that being said, there are some states and countries which still consider surrogacy or third-party reproduction as something that is against public policy. Yeah, and the reasons vary. In some places, it's due to customs, religious beliefs, and in other places, it's based on just general interest and welfare of the people. So getting back to the question, can you get a surrogate just because? Well, taking into consideration all of the ethical and legal issues, the answer is not exactly. There are some cases where you can't, or I should say shouldn't, engage in surrogacy regardless of whether there is a medical issue. There's places like Nebraska or Michigan and countries like Finland or France where although, you can live there and you could probably go somewhere else to do surrogacy, you legally can't do it there. In other places, although it's not a legal roadblock, some individuals are prevented from using surrogacy as a family building option due to their religious beliefs. From Islam to Christianity to Judaism, there's different views on third-party reproduction, and for some people, religion can pose a barrier. But the main consideration surrounding whether you can use a surrogate just because is the idea of the risk it poses to the surrogate. Because undertaking surrogacy requires a woman to place her body at risk where she otherwise wouldn't, some states do require some form of medical necessity before you can be cleared to proceed with the surrogacy journey. But what qualifies as a medical need and how that medical need is determined is not specifically defined sometimes. So you have some states like Florida where the law states that surrogacy is allowed only when, get this, within reasonable medical certainty, the hopeful mother can't physically gestate a pregnancy to term, or the gestation will cause a risk to the physical health of the hopeful mother, or the gestation will cause a risk to the health of the fetus. Wow. Now, remember that law said that it had to be within reasonable medical certainty. Well, here's the kicker. That same law doesn't necessarily define what that means. But state law isn't the only reason that you may need a medical necessity in order to engage in surrogacy. Even if your state law doesn't require a medical necessity, your medical provider or other surrogacy professional, they may require one as a term of working with them. Why? Again, it's about not placing another woman's life at risk if it isn't necessary. Now, most surrogacy professionals subscribe to the ethical codes of the ASRM. That's the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. And ASRM's guidelines state that gestational carriers may be used when a true medical condition precludes the intended parent from carrying a pregnancy, or it would pose a significant risk of death or harm to the woman or the fetus. Another mouthful, but that's what ASRM has to say. Now, true medical conditions can run the gambit from biological inability to conceive, or AKA being a man, all the way to significant uterine anomalies. Now, one thing is for sure, true assisted reproduction professionals always consider the risk to the surrogate. So contrary to popular belief, None of my closest colleagues, nor I, would ever engage in a surrogacy arrangement simply because the intended mother didn't want to gain weight or didn't want to risk getting stretch marks. So the next time you hear about a celebrity surrogacy journey, please hold the judgment because there was probably a good chance that there was a medical necessity involved. If you find yourself in a situation where surrogacy is medically necessary or advisable, I've got something for you. A free gift. It's called the Surrogacy Roadmap, and it walks you through each of the steps of the surrogacy process from beginning to end. So if you want that free gift, simply click on the link below and you'll be taken to thesurrogacyroadmap.com and you'll get your hands on that valuable resource for free. See you in the next episode.